Hello and welcome to my blog. Today we're going to talk about diversity. Diversity exists because God gave us free will. Let's explore this subject together. We are told diversity exists in the animal kingdom because of the process of evolution. Diversity exists in our solar system and the universe in general because of natural laws that govern our environment. Diversity happens because of organic progressions, happenstance, and a myriad of other factors which, as of yet, are difficult to be quantified. All of this appears logical on the surface, but there is an underlying reason why planets are formed differently, animals evolve along a certain path, and why some suns are hotter than others. This is because the universe wasn't just a random occurrence, a big bang without a reason. Our universe was created in a precise manner to unleash the creative ability of spirits who started out as young, immature spirits, just like us. In the previous chapter, I wrote how the universe was created by thought. The original thought was by God, but as creation persisted, other realms, galaxies, solar systems et al. Were formed by the minions of the divine intelligence. The true underlying cause of diversity is revealed in the book Life Beyond the Veil in the Lowlands of Heaven section. The book was compiled in the 1920s. It was a communication to the Reverend G. Val Owen from Astriel in the spirit world that introduces the foundation of variety within our universe. The heavenly bodies are the expression in matter of ideas originating among those high in the heavenly spheres of creative power. They are all in each the effect of thoughts and impulses proceeding from those spheres. When a world is in process of creation, those high beings are constantly energizing and projecting into the forming matter their spiritual influence and, so to speak, character. Thus, although the planets of your system are all conformable to one great scheme of unity, they are diverse in their individual characteristics. Those characteristics answer to the characters of the great lords in whose charge they severally are. Astronomers are correct when they say that certain of the elements which go to form the Earth are found in, say, Mars and Jupiter, and in the Sun itself. But they would err if they should say that they are found in the same proportion or in similar combination. Every planet differs in scheme which governs them as a system. What is here said of the units which go to make up the solar system may be applied to the wider range of things. Considering the solar realm as a unit, it is not identical, either in composition of elements or to planetary constitution, with other systems. Each differs from its fellow also. The great lords are those spirits who have traveled up the long ladder of improvement. They, at one time or another, have experienced each of the stages of reincarnation on different types of planets. While we are only on the second stage, Earth is a planet of atonement, where we pay for our past wrongs in order to learn to follow the path of love, charity, and fraternity, the great lords have traversed the entire reincarnation process to become pure spirits. No longer do they need to don a physical form. The great lords know God in a way in which we are incapable of comprehending. God didn't create the universe to be a uniform structure with robot-like beings all obediently following the same path and responding to the same stimuli in the exact same manner. He knew that a universe without individual choice would have all of the variety of an ant colony. Hence, the Supreme Intelligence endowed us with free will. Free will. We have to learn to control it. There is a price to be paid for free will. Free will is the cause of all injustice and cruelty on earth. For we are allowed to discover for ourselves the pain and heartache that is caused by our wrongful deeds. This is the purpose of reincarnation. This is why we live on a planet of atonement, which is the equivalent of a middle or junior high school, where the main goal of the teachers and administrators is to get the unruly and hormonal teenagers past a tumultuous phase. Whereas for our vulnerable young, the transition period only lasts 2 to 3 years. For the collective human race, our track to acquire the necessary attitudes and skills to be civilized towards each other started around the rise of the first civilizations and is continuing today. If one begins at the ancient Mesopotamian civilization, around 6,500 BC until today, it is a span of over 8,500 years. Although we have been told that previous earthly cultures, such as Atlantis, existed before and were destroyed due to the fact that the level of the human race's technology outpaced their spirituality. A cynic might very well say that our primary advancement is the ability to destroy each other more effectively, which is witty and true, but there is more. Where once there was no constraint on our inhumanity towards each other, for example, the worldwide acceptance of slavery, torture, and wars, there is now a consensus against such practices. There is advancement. One must look beyond one lifetime. In our own field of vision, we see disaster around every corner, but upon reflection, over hundreds of years, one can detect a slow, almost glacial pace forward. The spirit world tells us that the growth of mankind will not be a straight upward sloping line, but rather an upward spiral, where great wars, catastrophes, and other cataclysmic events may seemingly hurl our progress back a step or two, but we are then positioned to acquire the collective lessons we so sorely require. An example of this is the Dark Ages. Rome was founded at the urging of the spirit world. The spirit Emmanuel, who was the spirit mentor and guide for the famous Brazilian medium Francisco Chico C. Xavier, tells us in the book On the Way to the Light how the city of Rome was first settled. Tormented and vexed by repeated battles with the Gauls, the Etruscans decided to take up a new life, and guided indirectly by messengers from the invisible world, a large portion of them settled in the future Rome, which at that time was nothing but a village of simple, unprotected hovels. During the Republican era of Rome's history, it became a great power, the dominating authority of the entire Mediterranean Sea. The spirit world envisioned Rome growing by spreading its good practices and bringing a civilized aspect to their nearby nations. Regrettably, Rome's leaders tasted power, as Emmanuel describes. Instead of extending its ties through education and harmony, it allowed itself to become captive to a host of aggressive and ambitious spirits, widening its influence in the world with the ballistas and catapults of its warriors. The Romans had brought much advancement: the concept of the family, active citizen participation, the importance of education, honor in business dealing, and organizational structure of institutions, and in building infrastructure to the ancient world. The spirit world wished to save these gifts. Therefore, they attempted to rectify the errors of Rome with the coming of Christ during Augustus's reign. Regrettably, the advent of Christ and his followers could not right the ship. Emmanuel comments about the fall of Rome. The weakness and impotence of human beings did not allow them to understand that Christianity had been called to the role of governance solely to educate the sentiments of those who governed, preparing them to take enlightenment and fraternity to the other peoples of the earth, who at the time were regarded as barbarians by the culture of the empire. What follows the fall of Rome truly demonstrates the power of the spirit kingdom. Emmanuel reports, "The spiritual authorities, under Christ's aegis, renewed the educational processes of the European world at the time just starting today's civilization by calling all human beings to life in the field so that, by tilling the soil and being in contact with nature, they could learn more effectively." How many historians marvel at the fall of a great civilization into utter darkness, the loss of learning, medicine, and political systems, How could this have happened? It was the mass re-education of an entire population required to bring Western civilization up to the next level, where the Dark Ages may be seen as a huge leap backwards. It was a necessary re-education for the millions of souls who had lived in the glory days of the expanding empire. They had to be brought back down to understand that acquiring dominion over others is not the path to love, fraternity, and charity, but the road to perdition. Thus a civilization was destroyed, and out of its ruins a new one created. The upward spiral was resumed with the advent of the Renaissance. It's not just the great lords who create. As God set the creation of the universe in motion, and the great lords utilized their creative powers to fashion solar systems and planets, there are lesser spiritual beings exercising their free will to flesh out the details. Astriel explains the hierarchy of conception. It issues in the individual mind of the chief lord of the particular system. Under him are other great lords who work in unison with his one governing idea. But these also have freedom in those things which are under their charge, and so on downward to the minute things of creation, the flowers and trees and animals, and the formation of the face of the planet. It is on account of this latitude in creation and control that you have such diversity in detail, and because of the limit of restriction to the exercise of that free individuality, that you have the unity which you find interpenetrating every department and subdepartment of creation. The Hindus' belief in many gods, which may be close to the truth, for the great lords and even those under them are gods according to our frame of reference. They create, they fashion, and they destroy, to form their desires once again. Interestingly, Astriel goes on to tell us about a cascading set of beings who are part of the process to develop and maintain life, from intelligent spirits who possess free will to living objects with robotic-like functionality in which parameters are given and their software is sophisticated enough to control the system assigned. Astriel puts it in his own language, trying to convey the complexity of the system to the 1920s level of technology. Under these supervisors, there are also myriads of lesser ministers of different grade downward, until some of the lowest orders may scarcely be termed persons, for they merge into the lower species of life, which you might term sensory, as distinguishing them from those who, like ourselves, are possessed not only of intelligence, but also that of independence in judgment, which we know as free will. A picture emerges of a system vaster than our most wild imagination, that follows orders from on high, but is allowed room to improvise. A system which is supported by a massive set of auxiliary functionaries who come prepared to accomplish the menial and detailed task with minimal programming. Somehow it all works. Somehow bureaucracy doesn't grind the entire edifice to a halt. I believe our God-made universe survives and thrives throughout all eternity because free will is enshrined as its guiding principle. Unlike so many of our corporations and governments, where ego-driven leadership commands total authority and nothing is allowed without approval, our Maker understands that to turn beings into automatons is to destroy them and eventually the organizations producing them. Uniqueness is all around us. Astriel gives us a concrete example of the effect of an independent spirit guiding our formation. Now, a little more about the Earth itself. Geologists tell how some of the rocks are alluvial and others igneous in formation, and so on. But if you will carefully examine some of these, you will find that they give off a certain vapor, or one might almost say magnetic influence. That is the effect of the original inspiration into them by those who formed them originally, and these characteristics are worthy of deeper study than they have hitherto received. The chemical composition has been more or less ascertained, but the more subtle influences proceeding from the ever-vibrating particles have been neglected. Yet, when it is remembered that no piece of rock or stone is still, but that all its particles are in movement orderly and constant, it is only one step onward then to realize that, in order that this movement be maintained, there must be present some great force and, at the back of that force, a personality of which it is the expression. The mark of the individual creator, like the signature on a painting, is ever present in all things. Animal, vegetable, and mineral are all tagged by the great Lord and his or her team that carried out the designs. Our planet, our sky, our features, and the trajectory of our history is the result and ongoing desire of a great Lord who wished our environment into existence. Astriel sums it up. The whole material creation is nothing in itself and by itself. It is but the expression on a lower plane of personalities on higher planes, the effect of which their wills are the causes. As a man leaves the imprint of his character on his work day by day, so these great creative lords and their ministers have left the impress of their personality on these material phenomena. We are blessed to have as our creative Lord Jesus Christ, who came to earth himself to turn the course of history, and is now, beginning in the 1850s, with the revelation of the doctrine of Spiritism, preparing humankind for the next leap forward. He and his ministers are directing and guiding us, allowing each individual spirit the opportunity to accumulate the lessons required so we may become part of the grand team to create, conjure, love, and embrace new creations and spirits. If you are interested in what I have just talked about, diversity exists because God gave us free will, you can learn more in my book, Spirits and the Spirit Universe. This book will allow you to understand the organization and processes and composition of the spirit world. By understanding the spirit world and how it operates will allow you to understand your own world, your own life, and what it means in the scheme of the greater spirit universe, universes per se. We are part of a complex and wondrous process, rising us up to become one day pure spirits who are full of love, charity, fraternity, and honesty. Learn how the spirit universe guides us in this whole process. Read my series of 3 books, starting with Heaven and Below. The second book is Spirits and the Spirit Universe, and the third book is How Spirits Guide Us. The more you understand about your place, the happier and less stressful you shall be. God bless.